In this video we are going to take another look at how the Deathwatch is doing in 9th edition. Having recently been ranked as bottom tier by a popular hobby website, we will first look at the new statistics for April in an attempt to find out more about the relative faction strength, or rather, its lack of performance. In the second part of the video, we will look at several popular Deathwatch army lists, what is currently being played at tournaments, and how it matches with the initial predictions. Then for the final part, I will offer my personal takeaways from the various lists and the wrap-up of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Temmer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
At the beginning of March, barely 1.5 months ago, I released a video on the current state of the Deathwatch. The link is in the description. To quickly summarize, back then I followed a similar approach by first looking at the statistics and offering possible explanations. Back then I considered it likely that the lack of performance could be tied to a relatively fresh release of the supplement and people still being at the stage of experimenting. Furthermore, the Deathwatch is not a frequently played army, so we will likely always have an issue of small sample size. I then moved on to compare two lists played at tournaments and compared them to what had been predicted when the first Deathwatch FAQs dropped, namely Outriders and Eradicators spam. In the third part, I then offered some conclusions, such as delays due to fewer events and people still leaning heavily into Proteus kill teams and in general units that were already present in 8th edition. Perhaps the lack of heavy intercessors could have been a reason for that. What we didn't notice already back then were the use of army-wide invul saves. Lastly, a few strong new codexes started to show up, which put a fresh light on the moderate Space Marine Codex, as well as the Deathwatch supplement. Before moving on to the April scores, a quick rehash of how the Goonhammer Glyco scores looked back then in February. To quote directly from their article, Glyco is a rating system similar to ELO that can be used to gauge performance. As a 40k faction in our example wins or loses games, they gain or lose points from their score, gaining more points from beating a higher ranked faction and fewer from winning against a lower ranked faction. Likewise, losses to lower-ranked factions have harsher penalties. There are some additional factors to the model, such as how you want it to react to each new game result, but for the most part, those are the basics. In our model, a score of 1500 is about average. End of quote. As we can see on the diagram, the Deathwatch scored just below 1480 points, so a fair amount below average, at the bottom tier of Space Marine armies, together with the Ultramarines. In comparison, Tau scored slightly above 1420, and Harlequins being at the very top with almost 1570. The links to both the February as well as the April articles are in the description. The April graph looks slightly different. This is due to adding another layer, which is a 30-day win rate calculation. For the Deathwatch, both the rating and the 30-day calculation are pretty closely tied, resulting in roughly 1460 points, so yet another drop from the previous 1480 points, which was already below average. They further note in the article that Deathwatch has a bad ITC battle dataset win rate, very little top table success, and that while Redemptors and kill teams look promising, they don't really perform that great. To add insult to injury, Deathwatch has been demoted to a tier 4 ranking, which is the second worst, just above the trash tier. In a follow-up article called Tier 4 Blues, the issues of the Deathwatch and 3 sample lists are investigated further. I do recommend that you guys fully read the article by yourselves if you haven't seen it already. The link is in the description. As my personal summary of the article, I take from it that they identify the main Deathwatch issues as Jack of all trades, Master of none, the nerfs to the Space Marine 9th edition Codex hurting Deathwatch, many of the benefits applying only against Xenos armies, loss of special issue ammunition on most guns, as well as the lack of a popular meta choice, namely the attack bikes. If I missed anything relevant, you guys let me know in the comments. Before they proceed to present their conclusions and army list, they reference 3 Deathwatch lists. The first one should be familiar to viewers of this channel. It's Dineeth Liyagama's army. We have looked at one of his tournament lists in the last video about the standings of the Deathwatch. The second is Jerigold M's army. He's from Art of War. The third, and perhaps a bit the outsider of this trio, is DeathwatchSH's army guide that was posted on Reddit. We will now go through all the 3 lists. For the first list, we have 2 mobile HQ consisting out of a Xenophage / captain, as well as a chief librarian with jump pack. The main bulk of the army are 6 kill teams. One is an Indomitor kill team with 5 heavy intercessors and 5 plasma inceptors. Then there are 4 Proteus kill teams, consisting out of a mix of Deathwatch Veterans with bolt guns and storm shields, Vanguard Veterans with jump packs, lightning claws and storm shields. One squad also has an extra power fist and a heavy Thunderhammer. We then have a Spectre's kill team, which is basically just the default 5 infiltrators. Last but not least, we have the Chief Apothecary with the Selfless Healer Warlord trait. So clearly his list has undergone some changes from the Gladiator Gaming Teams event that we looked at back in February. He dropped the Corvus Blackstar and the bikes, and instead got one more Proteus kill team. The rest is pretty much the same. There are a lot of invulns across the army, with all the storm shields and of course the Dominus Aegis relic. He's also taking the ever popular Xenopurge discipline on the librarian. Moving on to the second list by Jerigold M. The HQs look a little different. We have a Primaris chaplain on bike here, as well as a librarian with a jump pack and the Xenopurge discipline. Surprisingly enough, there is no captain or watchmaster. Just like with the previous army, the main bulk are the troops with a squad of Deathwatch Veterans with combi flamers and a mix of chainswords and storm shields. This squad is used in combination with the drop pod. We then have 3 Proteus kill teams. One is a mix of Deathwatch Veterans with bolt guns and storm shields, as well as Terminators with Cyclone missile launchers and Thunderhammers and storm shields. The other 2 Proteus kill teams make use of a wild mix of units, including Deathwatch Veterans, a Black Shield, a Terminator with Thunderhammer and storm shield, Vanguard Veterans, and even a biker. One thing to point out here, however, is that these 2 kill teams are invalid as per the current supplement. The Black Shield can only be taken as a 6th member of the kill team. It's not a big deal though, he would simply have to drop a Vanguard Veteran and take another Deathwatch Veteran instead. Anyway, maybe the list just isn't fully up to date. Furthermore, we have another personal surprise, a Spectre's kill team including Reavers. Not sure how they are being played, as there are only 4 of them, and therefore combat squads are not an option. If anyone knows more about that particular pick, I would be most interested to hear how that kill team has been used. For elites, we then have the obligatory Apothecary, though he does not seem to have gotten the Chief promotion, as well as 2 minimum-sized squads of Vanguard Veterans with the popular loadouts. Once again, we have the mobile HQs, though not captain. We have a lot of kill teams, with an interesting mix of units, and we have plenty of invulns through all the storm shields. In this particular list, there is no Dominus Aegis though. What stands out here in particular is the Deathwatch Veteran squad with combi flamers loaded into the drop pod. Moving on to the third list, DeathwatchSH's Firewall. Compared to the other 2, this one is completely different. We have a plain captain on bike with the Dominus Aegis relic, a chief librarian on foot with the Xenopurge discipline, as well as a Primaris chaplain on bike with the beacon and chalice. Moving on to the troops, we immediately notice that there are only Primaris kill teams. One Fortis kill team with 6 intercessors and 4 outriders. This is to let the bikes keep the infantry keyword. Then we have another Fortis kill team with 5 intercessors and 5 hellblasters. The The third kill team is an Indomitor kill team, making full use of mixed units with 5 heavy intercessors, 3 flamestorm aggressors and 2 plasma inceptors. For the elite slots, we have the ever popular Redemptor Dreadnought, servitors for screening, a Vanguard Veteran squad, and then basically 2 more elites that don't take up a slot because of the captain. A Chief Apothecary with the Selfless Healer Warlord trait, and 2 company veterans. While quite different from the other 2, I certainly couldn't help noticing a lot of parallels to my own list that I'm currently running. People familiar with my beginner's guide to army building will notice its roots. What we do handle completely different are the third kill team, as well as our main close combat tools. I think DeathwatchSH regards the HQs more as buffing characters rather than beatsticks, but the picks themselves are still pretty close. As far as my own list goes, I still consider myself somewhat at the experimenting stage and have no doubt that he has been through more iterations. I like to be critical of my own lists, and I have to say that most likely the Hellblasters are more reliable than the Eliminators. The latter tend to be a bit hit or miss, literally, though I do like the psychological effect that they can have on people. I do love my Infiltrators, so I'm not yet ready to give up on them completely. As far as close combat goes, Vanguard Veterans are certainly winners of 9th edition so far, so no arguments there. I do really like how he did the Indomitor kill team, a great demonstration of how you can properly make use of mixed units, even in Primaris kill teams. Overall, I would say that the main differences are the HQs being multipliers rather than beatsticks, Assault Hellblasters being underrated, the Indomitor kill team mixed unit potential, as well as using servitors for screening. On the Hellblasters though, let it be said that based on some of the comments you guys did on the channel, I have been swayed and have been working on a squad of them myself. Haven't had the chance to test them yet, but after having seen this particular setup, I certainly will. Anyway, these differences aside, I think we have many common elements, which I have discussed extensively on the channel, to the point where you guys can most likely recite them in your sleep. HQ choices and some of the relics, the Xenopurge discipline, keeping the infantry keyword on bikes, using the Indomitor kill team, abusing company veterans, and of course just great units like the Redemptors, the Chief Apothecary, and the Vanguard Veterans. Oh, by the way, links to all the army lists are in the description. So, having looked into the 3 lists, let's move on and have a look at what the guy at Goonhammer concluded. The main recommendations are making proper use of mixed kill teams, combi flamers, relics such as the Dominus Sieges and the Beacon and Chalice, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, the Xenopurge discipline, as well as a few good stratagems. The list recommendation is then provided as following. For the HQs, a captain on bike with Thunderhammer, Imperium Sword and the Dominus Aegis relic. This seems like a combination of using the bigger base of the biker variant, while still having some sort of a beatstick. Furthermore, we have a chaplain on bike with the Beacon and Chalice, and the Phobos Librarian with the Xenopurge discipline. Pretty standard picks as far as I'm concerned. Where it gets interesting are the troops and the 3 kill teams, which are all Proteus. 2 of them are making use of the infantry bikes light variant, which I have also previously discussed on the channel. Basically, you can get cheaper and faster variants of the infantry bikes by combining the veteran bikes with a Vanguard veteran or 2 with jump packs. The 3rd kill team is a mix out of Deathwatch Veterans with bolt guns and storm shields, Terminators with cyclone missile launchers, and a bunch of close combat weapons, and then a final Vanguard veteran. The reasoning for this over another is that they can act independently of the captain with the Dominus Aegis, who will wander off beating up baddies with the other bikes at some point. For elite slots we have 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, the Primaris Chief Apothecary, a bunch of Vanguard veterans with the commonly used loadouts, and servitors. Before saying anything further, I will give credit where credit is due. They implemented everything they said, except for the combi flamers. Taking a quick step back from the lists and recalling what people speculated back when the first Deathwatch FAQ hit in October, things couldn't have turned out any differently. Back then, there was a huge Fortis and Indomitor kill team hype, with people predicting OPSEC Eradicators and Outriders spam. Some channels have certainly featured 15 Outriders since then. What was also said frequently was that the Proteus kill team is no longer competitive, and speaking of which, that competitive players might finally jump on the Deathwatch train. But in reality, things seem to be moving in an entirely different direction. Proteus kill team spam and generally units that were already available in 8th edition is what we are seeing in Deathwatch lists. There also seems to be somewhat of an antagonism towards the Primaris kill teams. While the Outriders did become rather pricey, I do sincerely wonder why people discredit the Indomitor kill team at this point. Heavy intercessors aren't even commonly available yet. Now, I do try to keep the salt of this channel as much as possible. I'm sure other people have plenty to give around as it is, so I will phrase the following as politely as I can. In the wake of this article, there was a discussion on the competitive Warhammer subreddit where some guy called the Indomitor kill team a trap and inferior to the Proteus kill team. When DeathwatchSH started running the numbers, the guy making the claim couldn't back it up and evaded further conversation on the matter rather cheaply. Link to that discussion is in the description too. The reason I mention this is because I think the promotion of 15 Outriders spam has done a lot of damage to the faction, and I would hate to see something similar happen once more, with the Indomitor kill team getting an unjustly bad reputation, especially with heavy intercessors not even being commonly available yet. Moving on, a few closing thoughts on the whole Proteus versus Primaris kill teams. Going for the latter is quite the investment, both financially as well as the time required to build and paint all the models up. My conservative estimate is that getting the models for a list similar to that of DeathwatchSH or mine will cost a minimum of $250, assuming you already had all the required Primaris units that were available to the Deathwatch in 8th edition. If that is not the case, the price can easily go up to around $500. There is of course also the previously mentioned limited availability of the heavy intercessors up until May. Undergoing such a drastic change within barely half a year for any army that sees little play among the top crowds might be unreasonable even for competitive players. I also think that some of them are of the older generation and somewhat stuck in the mindset of older editions. I say this with the utmost respect and consider myself just as guilty in many regards, as DeathwatchSH demonstrates with his composition of the Indomitor kill team. Making good use of mixed units is nothing exclusive to the Proteus kill team. While none of the suggested Proteus kill teams is bad, I have certainly featured very similar ones on the channel on multiple occasions. Going all out on them is where I feel lists and as such the performance of the Deathwatch faction as a whole is missing out. There are not just servitors to take away from the third list featured in the article, as far as I'm concerned. Not all is doom and gloom though, as if in spite of the recent developments, a Primaris-heavy list has managed to score rank 6 at the Ratcon 2021 event. The list features a single Proteus kill team with combi flamers out of a drop pod, but the remaining kill teams are in fact Primaris. 2 Indomitor kill teams with Plasma Inceptors in one and Eradicators in the other, as well as the infamous Forest kill team with 5 Intercessors and 5 Outriders. To round the list up, we have a few more classics like the Xenophage/Captain, the Librarian with the Xenopurge Discipline, a Chaplain on bike and the Chief Apothecary. All in all, none of this is entirely unexpected, but it's nice to see a Primaris-heavy Deathwatch list being played with success. With that being said, here are my personal takeaways from looking at the different lists. First, the Deathwatch has several strong HQ choices. While the Xenophage Blade Captain seems to be the most popular for the time being, the Captain on bike makes for a good competitor because of his larger base. When going for a Primaris or Dreadnought heavy list, the Dominus Aegis relic is pretty much mandatory. The Beacon and Chalice is another excellent pick to get slower kill teams in place. A Librarian with the Xenopurge discipline, using at least Fortified with Contempt and Primorphic Resonance, has become a staple for many Deathwatch lists. The reworked Command Squad offers great utility, mostly through the company veterans being cheap action monkeys and having access to the bodyguard ability. The company champion is a comparably cheap anti-character pick and can also carry the Dominus Aegis relic if required. Redemptor Dreadnoughts are excellent all-rounders and go especially well with a Deathwatch army thanks to the mentioned Dominus Aegis relic or the Teleportarium strategy. Making excessive use of mixed units is not just exclusively reserved for the Proteus kill team. I think that DeathwatchSH's variant of the Indomitor kill team illustrates this perfectly. When going for a Proteus kill team, the potential combinations are immense though. We have seen Cyclone missile launchers pop up in some of the lists, but I would also recommend us looking into the Infernus Heavy Bolter, a weapon I feel is highly underrated. The Heavy Bolter profile itself got boosted, so did Flamers. The Infernus can fire both profiles, with the hit penalty only affecting the Heavy Bolter. As that penalty is capped at -1, you can basically move and fire both profiles and still only get a -1 hit penalty. There's also a stratagem for dealing mortal wounds with a Heavy Bolter. Another advantage of the Deathwatch is making use of bikers with the infantry keyword. This can be achieved through both a Fortis or a Proteus kill team, with each having its pros and cons. While somewhat overshadowed by more popular kill team compositions, I think that making good use of a Fortis kill team with Hellblasters, as well as a Spectre's kill team deployed through concealed position, is currently being underrated. The kill teams aside, sometimes it can be beneficial to just include a regular unit, such as Vanguard Veterans, Infiltrators, Intercessors, or even Servitors. These all come with their own benefits. To wrap things up, as it currently stands in April, the Deathwatch rating has further plummeted, and they are now being considered bottom tier by popular content creators. Over the course of this video, we have looked at multiple Deathwatch lists, which many of the ones played at tournaments featuring mostly Proteus kill teams, while we have also seen a Primaris-heavy list which underwent heavy playtesting and has scored impressive results. Its to me obvious benefits have mostly been ignored in favor of the good old 8th edition mindset. I've given my opinion on why this might be the case, but bottom line is, the popular kill team recommendations seem to have completely changed, with the Proteus kill team now coming out on top. Looking beyond just Servitors as a takeaway from the Primaris heavy list, my personal key recommendations are as following. Captain with the Dominus Aegis, Librarian with the Xenopurge discipline. In general, try to keep these HQs mobile. The Beacon and Chalice is a good way to pull a slower kill team in position. The Command Squad offers strong picks such as Company Veterans and the Company Champion. As far as troops go, making good use of mixed units is still perfectly possible. This includes the Indomitor kill team. Another strength of the Deathwatch is having bikes count as infantry and making use of regular squads that generally work well in Space Marine armies. Many of these things I have previously covered on my channel, as you regulars most certainly know by now. For newcomers, I recommend you check out my various guides to the Deathwatch, where I cover many of the points raised in greater detail. So that's it for the current state of the Deathwatch in 9th edition. What has your experience been so far with the different kill teams, and how you guys feel about being ranked as bottom tier? Have I missed anything important? Let me know in the comments. I would also like to mention that I have freshly launched the SwissHammer Facebook page, where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. It has certainly turned out to be a longer one. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again, and see you next time.